Welcome to the Galactic Core Podcast. Here to review the latest films and TV shows from all your favorite intergalactic universes. Now, it's time to get your geek on. Please welcome your host, the prophesized chosen one. It's Andy.
Hello, welcome back to the Galactic Core Podcast. My name is Andy. I am here as always to guide you through this week's episode, and we are continuing our journey through all of Star Wars, every film, every TV series in chronological order, I should say. I'm not doing it in release order or anything like that, machete order, whatever you want to, how your preferred method of watching it all is. I'm doing everything in order. And today we are up to episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And as he has done and joined me to review the previous 2 prequel films, I have the king, the man, the top of the YouTube game. It's Clan Brandalorian.
What? Oh, yeah.
The man who is going to be top of the podcast pile very, very soon has come back to join us for another episode. Brandon, how you doing?
I'm doing great. We are, this is the one, man. This is what I know we've been waiting for this. And I know when you thought about outlining this entire segment on your wonderful channel, I knew you were like, all right, episode 3 will be here one of these days.
I knew it was going to take too long to get to. Obviously, because we've had episode 1, 2, we've had our Clone Wars review, and now it's time to talk about one of the most loved Star Wars films of all time. We're going to get to it in a bit, but something else I want to touch upon first. First of all, tell us how things are with you, man. Is everything all good?
Yep, everything's good. Just looking forward to this episode, man. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm anyone who knows me, I'm a big Revenge of the Sith fan. We're going to get into it as to sure why. And to be fair, the thing we're going to talk about first is going to be, I think, linking into it. If you've been keeping it hard to your chest in terms of like what it is, but when we've been doing these films reviews, we've also been counting down your top 3 all-time favorite Star Wars projects. So in third place, we had The Mandalorian. I see you. You had The Mandalorian in third place. In second place, you had Revenge of the Sith. Sorry, I'm absolutely wrong there. Return of the Jedi, even. Revenge of the Jedi, whatever we're going to call it, it's all the same thing. It's all Star Wars. Return of the Jedi, sorry, was what you had in your number 2 all-time favourite Star Wars slot. So that leaves us with 1. Before we get to that, though, like I did last time, I'm going to ask you to give me another honourable mention in terms of give us a slight curveball this time in terms of what's something that you love maybe more than most, something that isn't maybe as loved as everyone else, but whether TV show or film that you kind of tend to love more than most.
Like you said, one that I feel like I like more than most is the Book of Boba Fett. There are some piles, and it's just like, what are we doing here? Just leave this out. We could have went a different way. I get that, but at the same time, I feel like in the Mandoverse, the Book of Boba Fett and those 7 episodes, I feel like they will matter more than a lot will think going into the Dave Filoni Mandoverse movie. That is me being hopeful. But I think, he has his own show for a reason. I don't think it's a dud. So there are some weird parts, but that's what we get with Disney Star Wars. It's not George Lucas, but Disney Star Wars has also given us, I'd say, collectively 8 out of 10 projects. Just great. So overall, can't be mad, but Book of Boba Fett is definitely on the honorable mention. Not at the top of the list, but it's I like it more than most.
I know what you mean. I thought it was a solid story, everyone. But I mean, I know everyone was basically whining because they wanted to see the badass bounty hunter Boba Fett. They didn't want to see this older Boba Fett that had changed how he felt about things. His escape from the Sarlacc pit and being with the Tuskens and training with them and becoming sort of their way of taking on their way of life. It changed who he was, and the idea of a clan and family and whatever meant more to him after that. And so he changed the way that he was going to be in charge and the way that he was going to lead. not to say that there definitely weren't some weird moments in there. I mean, a whole episode dedicated to Mando and Grogu was a bit strange, but at the same time, fucking fantastic, because we do get to see Mando with the Darksaber. We do get to see Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka. And a bit of Grogu training there, and Grogu getting his decision to leave and go back and join Mando. So, whilst outside of maybe the main elements, people are like, why do I have to? It's like everyone says that if someone goes from watching series 2 of Mandalorian to series 3 and they haven't watched Book of Boba Fett, it's kind of like that line of somehow Grogu returned. Like, I don't know how. So a bit strange if you haven't watched it, and a bit of a weird way to put it in there. But all of their stories tie in together. You know, we got obviously Boba Fett in season 2 of The Mandalorian in the first place, and he was absolutely lethal in those episodes when we saw him. To be fair, so
the dude wanted his armor back. That's all he wanted.
Badly. Just the way that he goes at those stormtroopers before he has his armor, when he's using the Tusken sphere thing or whatever it was.
Yes,
it was absolutely brutal. And then obviously that badass scene when he does get his armor back and he flies in and just decimates the stormtroopers. And they end up running away from him. So it's just like absolutely epic. The character's epic overall. I have to admit, I was never someone that necessarily got all the hype around him from the original trilogy. I think obviously a lot of the hype came from just he looked badass.
Just looks, yep.
So that was pretty much the entire premises of his coolness factor, and his likability was just the fact that the character does fuck all, really, in terms of like his role in episode 5 and his very brief bit in episode 6 before he gets put into the Sarlacc pit. He doesn't really actually do anything befitting that of one of the greatest bounty hunters of his generation. But you know, badass look, you got to capitalize on that, and they did so. You know, liked his escape from the Sarlacc pit and his time with the Tuskens, and I generally overall enjoyed the Book of Boba Fett. Again, I'm kind of one of those people, unless it's absolute trash, I generally like most Star Wars stuff because I'm such a fucking fanboy when it comes to Star Wars that I don't have too much of a bad word to say about most of it. So
I'm the same
way.
with
you on Boba Fett. Underrated, I think, at times. It's not to say, like you said, it's right up there, but at the same point, I think it's a bit underrated by a lot of people just because they wanted the badass bounty hunter instead of a progression of his story. So, well, let's get to it. We've had your third, we've had your second, we've had your honourable mentions. Hit me, Brandalorian. What's your number one all-time favourite Star Wars project?
Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
Yes.
It took 2 seconds to think, and I think one of the seconds was just thinking of how to say it correctly. But yeah, it's a very, very popular opinion, but I think it's just facts. You know, it's the best film in Star Wars, and I feel like there is some honorable mentions at being number 1, but I feel like the honorable mentions will either be number 2 or number 3. But Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, best movie in all of cinema, in my opinion.
In all of cinema?
All of cinema.
So if someone said, make me a list of your favourite films of all time, no matter the genre, Revenge of the Sith would be number 1.
Yep. Revenge of the Sith, number 1. Number 2, A Bronx Tale. And then number 3 is Fright Night, 1985. That's my top 3 films all time.
Wow, you've obviously given it some good thought. I don't think I could name a favourite film of all time, to be fair. But, I mean, it's a fantastic film. It's the reason we're here to talk about today. But in terms of, like, that's a brave thing to say that you think it's... Well, the debate is there, isn't there, between what is the greatest Star Wars film? There's always 2 in the running. It's Revenge of the Sith or Empire Strikes Back. It's generally the 2 in discussion. Empire Strikes Back has long been considered probably the best Star Wars film of all time. It has one of the biggest cinema twists of all time as well, with obviously the reveal of Vader being Luke's dad. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it yet, but sorry. But then I think the shift in it has become from the generation sort of, I guess my sort of age, who were people in their late teens, early 20s who saw it when it first came out, to someone yourself who would have been a young... I mean, how old were you in 2005?
I was 8.
So people that grew up as young kids with the prequel trilogy and have come to being adults, because a lot of the original trilogy lovers didn't really like the prequels. And
Right.
over the last 20 years, that has sort of subsided, and the love for the prequels has come through by the people that grew up with it as young kids or as teenagers and young adults. And so therefore, there's been a huge shift, I found, from Empire Strikes Back being classed as the best Star Wars film to the younger generation, like the younger millennials and Gen Z, saying that Revenge of the Sith is the best Star Wars film. Is that something that you think is played a big factor in that?
Oh yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think it comes down to where you're from and when you're born. Because I know there's going to be kids right now that are 8, 9, 10 years old that'll say the sequels are their favorite Star Wars. So I mean, and you can't be mad at them. I think it just goes down the line. That's what they grew up to, and I mean, there's always better Star Wars movies, in my opinion, or TV shows that you'll like more than what you grew up around. But I mean, I think that definitely plays a factor.
I think that's fair. It's just interesting that the shift that I've seen over 20 odd years of the last 20 years anyway, of Star Wars fandom, of how that shifted. And I, for a long time, did have Empire Strikes Back as my favourite Star Wars film. And then the more, I've watched Revenge of the Sith more than any other film in probably my entire life. And it was my another Star Wars friend of mine, Paul, who eventually managed to almost submit me after years of dogging me about it, going, come on, just admit Revenge of the Sith is your favourite Star Wars film. And I finally submitted and went, yep, okay, it's overtaken Empire Strikes Back now, and it is my same. So I am the same as you. My all-time favourite Star Wars project is Revenge of the Sith. It's the most memeable of all the Star Wars films.
Yep.
There's so much stuff in there that we do get from it. So it's the story of Anakin's fall to the dark side, isn't it? So it's what we're here to chat about today. Fuck it. I mean, actually, just before we get into that, because I was just interested to asking, actually, before I get too carried away and get in Revenge of the Sith deep, just out of interest, because we've done your best, what would you say? I don't like using the word worst, because I think it's always a bit of a harsh word to use, but I'm going to use it just to simplify the question. If we've done your top 3 favourite all-time Star Wars projects, what would you say is the bottom of the list for you in terms of what you would rate the worst all-time Star Wars project?
I've heard bad things about Star Wars Resistance, the animated. I haven't watched it, so I can't judge on that. But from the animation standpoint, I can kind of see how that could be irritating. But that's not going to be at the bottom of my list, as I feel like it's at most. So I think Force Awakens was awesome. I think it was really cool how that's what the big weight was, and finally seeing that, I was like, oh man, this is crazy. Last Jedi, I feel like, is just kind of overhated. Like it's just not what you expected Luke to be, because you see him at the end of Force Awakens and you're like, holy shit, man, Luke is right there. And then credits, you're like, no, I can't wait any longer. But the Luke, that was a swerve ball. That was just going in an opposite direction. And it just wasn't expected. Like I said, that's okay though, because I think, if you really look between the lines, you can kind of see why Luke acts the way he does. But when you're an OG Star Wars fan, or if someone wants to hold that title, you kind of are just like, yeah, that's just not George's Luke Skywalker, which, I mean, you can look at a lot of things that way. But, between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, I think the cinematography is outstanding. It's some of the most beautiful Star Wars you can see. And I don't get the hate on the lightsabers, really. Like the colors, I think they look beautiful. I like how they're more vibrant, as to A New Hope. It's just like a very white blade, but has a hue of blue. Like, no, like I want a blue lightsaber. That's what makes it different from everyone else's. Because if everyone just has a white lightsaber with a red, blue, or green hue to it, it's just kind of, everyone has the same. But I would. It's a toss up. I'd probably go with 9, just because I understand why they brought Palpatine back. Kind of had to make up for Rey's lineage and where she came from finally. Because I mean, they had like 3 different writers just for 8 and 9, I believe. So you can kind of tell everything's going through, but I think that's what puts them so low is just you can feel how rushed the project was. I think the final result was okay, but it was just rushed. That's the only thing I find negative from it is just how rushed it is. But 8 or 9, it's a toss up.
I think obviously Carrie Fisher passing away played a huge part in the change of story for episode 9, didn't it? So she was always going to be one of the big focal points for episode 9. And then her passing, they had to almost completely rewrite the story, and obviously use previous footage just to fill in what they could with her. So yeah, it's a tough one. Do you want to know what mine is? Bottom of the list, and I caused a bit of controversy with this in the past when I've said it in some groups, but my least favorite all-time Star Wars project is actually Solo.
If you gave me a pause, I was gonna be like, let me guess.
I just haven't. I don't feel good about it. I don't hate it. To be fair, I just feel nothing for it. The story of Han and Chewie meeting just does nothing for me. The droid rebellion. I don't know what was going on with that. It just seemed a bit forced. Obviously, the cameo at the end with Maul was great, unexpected. Especially with Ray Park doing the physical appearance and Sam Witwer doing the voice. So you're mixing both the best bits of Maul. To be fair, the only redeeming bit for me was Donald Glover as Brando Calrissian. Little hint, if anyone saw the last episode that we did together, is that when he was talking about how he found names for his podcast, and he was thinking about calling himself Brando Calrissian, which I thought was a great name. But yeah, Lando Calrissian, I thought was the big good part of that Solo film. Apart from that, I'm just not enamored by it anyway. It just doesn't do anything for me on any level.
Yeah, and see, like I get that. Like I can't put any shade on anyone who doesn't like anything that they don't like. Like I think that's just ridiculous. But like I get it. Like there's definitely some parts of Solo where I'm like, what is going on? And it's just like the only saving grace right now in some scenes is Woody Harrelson. If I didn't love Woody Harrelson, I'd be like, what is this character? But yeah, I get that. I did love the Maul at the end. That was just amazing. And the fact that he's just chilling on Dathomir, like you can't ask for anything else. Like that's just awesome. But yeah, I think that they're like how he gets his name, like Solo. It's like
oh god, that was cringier than Anakin's "I don't like sand" stuff. Yeah, it really was.
Like I didn't like that. I thought the little pod chase scene at the beginning, I thought that was kind of cool. With Kira, just seeing that Han had a other chick he used to love before Leia is kind of cool. But and then I didn't Dryden Voss's character was cool for the story, but I didn't like that his last name was Voss because I'm a Quinlan Voss guy, and I'm like, no, bring him as Quinlan Voss, not Dryden Voss. Like leave that name alone. It's touchy.
No, I know what you mean. And I suppose if you can use that surname, they could have played it as like, the brother that they were brothers and separated at birth when Quinlan was taken to the Jedi and
that
stuff.
Would be
and
awesome.
His brother turns out to be a leader of a gangster of a gang instead. So yeah, it's not even that I hate the film. I just don't feel anything about it. To me, it was never asked for. It was never needed. It's just nothing to me, unfortunately. So yeah.
I do know that to keep it simple, I do know they had an original director and writer, but then Bryce Dallas Howard's dad took it over. Like they scrapped it halfway, and then he just kind of finished the rest. So once I heard that, I was like, okay, makes sense why the movie is the way it is.
Yeah, Ron did a good job coming in halfway through and ordered reshoots and stuff. So, was it Killiage? I can't remember his name now. It's not Killiage. I'm thinking of the Iron Man character for some reason. I can't remember his name now. The guy that played Solo in the film.
Oh man, I can't remember his name. He was in Cocaine Bear, and that was his latest role.
It's bugging the crap out of me. If I don't actually look it up, it's going to bug me. Give me 1 second.
That's all good.
Alden Ehrenreich.
Yeah, I would have
I don't
never
know where I was
remembered
going with his name. I was thinking Aldrich Killian for fucking Iron Man 3 for some reason. I don't know what the fuck's going on with that? But yeah, yeah. Donald Glover, the only saving grace for me in that film. But oh well, never mind.
it. Yeah.
But here we go. Let's get into it. Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So, 3 years after the onset of the Clone Wars, the Jedi are spread across the galaxy in a full-scale war against the Separatists. The Jedi Council dispatches Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi on a mission to defeat General Grievous, the head of the Separatist army, and Count Dooku's former apprentice, to put an end to this war. Meanwhile, after having visions of his wife Padme Amidala's dying in childbirth, Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker is tasked by the Council to spy on Palpatine, who is secretly the Sith Lord. Palpatine manipulates Anakin into turning to the dark side and becoming his apprentice, Darth Vader, with wide-ranging consequences for the galaxy. I think that's a fucking understatement. So it was just that's the like plot synopsis ripped from IMDb, I think. And I was just like, yeah, you're sort of under fucking handing that a little bit, aren't you? Saying there's just a few consequences for the galaxy. So, Brandon, it's 2005. You're in your little shorts and jeans. It's summertime. Revenge of the Sith. What are your thoughts from back then?
One of the most earliest memories at that film was I was watching, enjoying, love the cinematics right at the beginning. We get a crazy battle above Coruscant. Gotta love that. And just the way everything looked, it was like, all right, here we go. This is going to be a wild ride. And I just remembered my dad's like saying the entire week up to it, like, this is the missing puzzle piece. Like, this is going to be, something like insane. So, I just remember feeling so sad, when Mace Windu got thrown out the window. Like, I felt like my heart just sunk, and I was like, man, what the hell? And I never did quite understand why that just hit me so hard, and I still think about it to this day every time I see that scene. But something as a kid, just I was super sad about it. But man, it's just seeing General Grievous, like, who's this guy? 4 lightsabers, just in kicking ass, and seeing, the way he goes out. Obi-Wan has a different look to him, short hair, nice beard. Anakin, a scar on his face, and then longer, shaggy hair. And then Padme, as an 8-year-old child, I'm like, I feel funny. Like, this lady looks really nice. And then, you see less and less Jar Jar as the prequels go on, but we do get to see him. And then I think the biggest point is Palpatine. This is like Palpatine's episode, Vader, Anakin turning into Vader is one thing, but the way we just get to see Palpatine just manipulate everybody, and it's just literally like there's no one stronger, and you get to see that in this film. And but yeah, as a kid, it, obviously, I was able to understand it a lot better than Phantom Menace, that's for damn sure. And more for sure with Attack of the Clones. So this was like one of the first movies I could actually understand a little bit more comprehension. So, but it was a great one.
It gets me every single time this film. Anyone who has listened to me for a while now knows that Anakin / Vader, my favorite all-time character of anything. I always said that Anakin's story is the greatest Shakespearean tragedy of all time, because he's just manipulated from start to finish. He's like never got to be his own man. The only decision he ever really got to make by himself that properly had an effect on his life was to throw Palpatine down that shaft at the end. Everything up until then, he was a slave. He was ordered to do. Nothing was what he wanted to do as a person, with the exception maybe of marrying Padme. We spoke about in our last episode together. So the 2 biggest decisions of his life were basically, that he only really got to make by himself, were the person he got to marry and the person he got to save at the end of his life. So 2 of the biggest decisions of his life that were 2 of the widest ranging consequences at the same time, bar him turning to the dark side. But even then, he felt forced to do that, wasn't it? So we'll get into Anakin's sort of main story a bit later, but let's talk about that opening sequence. So this has been described as, and I carry the same vote, to be fair, that this is the greatest opening to any Star Wars film. The shot of going, over the ship and then down, and then all of a sudden you just see this massive battle going on above above the planet of Coruscant, and you're following Anakin and Kenobi's fighters as they weave their way through. They obviously get sort of hit by the missiles, and even you get memes straight from the beginning. And it's just like, this is where the fun begins, and it's just meme central from that moment outwards. And he's like, even Kenobi's like, flying is for droids, god damn it. So he obviously gets his ship decimated by some of the vulture droids and whatever. And yeah, it's just, and they land on Duke Grievous's cruiser. They go up. We know it's a trap, and they're there to face Dooku. Rematch number 2, or if you've watched the Clone Wars series, by then it's rematch 7 or 8 or something. It's always that thing where they go back and Anakin's always like, my powers have doubled since the last time we met, Count. And if you've actually watched the Clone Wars, they met like a month or 2 before. It's kind of like, it's a bit random once you've watched that throw in, but at the time, obviously, like, here we go. Your thoughts on the Anakin Kenobi Dooku battle and the opening crawl in general?
Yeah, so I mean, that is one thing I do remember in the theaters, was just that knocking boom, like as the ships are just cruising in, and then you just see the big Venator, and then there's another big Venator, so you really get to see what those clone cruiser ships look like. And yeah, just I remember always being so annoyed by the vulture and pit droids, or the vulture droids, and it's just like, man, like, why are they? And of course they'd be on Obi-Wan. Like, they would not get on Anakin's ship. Of course it's Obi-Wan's. And pretty much anything to show Obi-Wan's annoyance with technology and droids. So he's just like, yeah. But I always love the scene where they crash land into the invisible hand, and Obi-Wan just shoots out of his starship and just goes ham on some battle droids. Like, that always gets me. I'm like, man, that's so badass. But then Anakin and Obi-Wan find their way to Dooku, and I think the way Dooku walks in, this dude's just flexing like, yeah, I whooped both of your asses last time. This is about to be easy. And of course, Palpatine's in shackles, sitting on the throne, kind of throwing back to episode 6, seeing where he's ultimately going to be one day, just sitting on the throne watching things happen. And it always just made me so mad that Dooku just easily beats Kenobi again. I'm like, dude, come on. Like, I want Obi-Wan to, get some revenge on Dooku as well. But dude, insane fight. And I always love, like, when, some of the YouTubers will kind of like slow down the sparring between Anakin and Dooku tries to do the same exact move that took off his arm last time, but Anakin counters it and then goes under, cuts his arms off, and then just, it's nuts, dude. The Nick Gillard did a crazy job with that choreography, with those with the fencing. It's insane how they call back to other battles and stuff, and it's the same moves. And so I think that overall opening 20 minutes is some of the best Star Wars you can see.
And did you ever read the Revenge of the Sith novel?
So that Christmas of 2005, that was one of the best Christmases I ever had. I got so much Revenge of the Sith action figures, and I actually got that book. But like, that book was, huge back then, especially the paperback is just thick. But I never did end up finishing reading that. But I've read a couple, or I've listened to a couple audiobooks of it and clips on YouTube, but I haven't read it myself.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up is because this novel it goes into so much more depth about what each particular character is feeling at those particular moments in the film. I don't believe these books are technically canon anymore, which is a shame, but they were canon at the time, and the like I said, the depth they went into. So at the moment where Dooku gets his hands cut off, and Palpatine says, "Kill him now," and we see Dooku give that sort of surprised look to Palpatine, and when he realizes he's basically been screwed, There's a great bit in the novel where Dooku has that realization that he has been screwed over, and he basically thoughts race through his mind about how he's dedicated, the last part of his life to the Sith, how the plans that he had and what he could have done instead if he hadn't gone down this route, and how he, comes to that realization that he was always just a pawn for the Sith, and how Anakin will be the same as well. And those are basically his last thoughts before Anakin cuts his head off. And it's just that sort of added depth to it of even someone that was technically always as smart as Dooku and capable as Dooku never quite really realised what his role was until the last bit of his the last moments of his life. Right. And even then, that he's been expertly outplayed by Palpatine is when you have that extra sort of. I always find when you have that extra bit of knowledge of and having read that, or you just even read it now, it just breaks your heart a little bit, because he's sort of like, damn, Dooku, like, how did you not know that was coming? And we're like, we know it's coming because we know the fucking story, but it's like, how could you not realise that this is what the Sith were going to do in the first place? They were going to screw you over. Like, how many times did Palpatine tell you to go easy on Anakin during the Clone Wars and not kill him because you had bigger plans for him? And Palpatine had always told Dooku that the plan was eventually they were going to bring Anakin with him and be like the other apprentice, the third one of their crew, that he planned to break the rule of two and bring Anakin into the fold as well, and he would be their servant. And for him to believe that, fucking Palpatine must have sold him hard. Because if you're like, well, we're going to take someone who is like the chosen one, essentially, and get him to the dark side, and he's going to be our apprentice or our underling. To believe that, he must have been sold hard.
Oh, yeah.
But Dooku gets killed. His head goes off. Anakin, again, sort of showing the influence I think Palpatine has over him. It's not necessary. I don't think Anakin would have done that for anyone else. Even if, like, Mace and Yoda stood in front of him and said, chop his head off, he'd have gone, no, if you want to do that, you do that yourselves.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anyone else that could have stood in front of him and asked him to do that, and he would have done it. Palpatine's the only one that I think could have done that. And then, of course, we get to see them up against Grievous for the first time. Well, they don't really go up against him, I suppose, but we get the whole you're shorter than I expected scene, and then quick fight against the Magna Guards. That funny little bit where one gets his head chopped off and he's still still twirling away against Kenobi, and then it's time to abandon ship after Grievous is. I mean, Grievous, first of all, first time we've seen the character on screen in film anyway. This sort of hunking, great fucking, what was it, like 8-9 foot tall robot, or whatever, with this deep, chesty cough going on. Fucking petrifying. I remember, like, because I was 2005. How much is that going? Almost 20 years ago. So I would have been like about 19, 20 at the time. Where are we? In 2024, aren't we? I'm just fucking losing the plot a little bit here. So 19 years ago, so I'd have been 21, about 21 when the film came out. And even then I was like, holy fuck, Grievous is terrifying. Like, I've not seen anything like this for a while.
Yeah, I mean, especially, Grievous, and I always thought it was like so weird that his you could just see like his heart and his like lungs and some of his intestines. You're like, dude, that's you don't really see that. But I think the character of Grievous, it goes a long way, and I'm glad that they that he was one of the characters in the Clone Wars animated series that got a lot more attention. Some of those background characters, you actually get to dive deep into their arcs and then stories that weren't told. So Grievous is definitely a huge point of Revenge of the Sith too. Like, I know I said it's basically Palpatine and Anakin's movie, but I mean, Grievous plays a huge part, and I feel like he just kept delaying the process. And Palpatine knew once he'd fight someone like Kenobi one-on-one, that was when they're going to have to, call in the, Order 66. So, that's just another thing to look at Palpatine and be like, man, he just orchestrated this, awesome, cyborg that is actually, trained in Jedi ways. So, I mean, that's awesome character. One of a kind, definitely.
Absolutely. I forgot to mention as well, one of my favourite sort of bits of it, after Dooku's been killed and Anakin's got Kenobi on his back. Palpatine's trying to tell Anakin to leave Kenobi because they've got to leave there and then. And Anakin kind of just looks at him annoyed, and he's like, his fate will be the same as ours. And just to think that all three of those characters died on a Death Star, essentially. So it's like, his fate will be the same as ours. Okay, Kenobi go first on the Death Star, followed by Palpatine and Anakin himself at the end. So,
Man,
nice little parallel moment. And we get that a little bit in Star Wars, I know, when he's just like I think it was in episode 2, wasn't it, when Kenobi says to Anakin, he's like, why do I get the feeling you're going to be the death of me? Almost, it's kind of cheesy, but you're like, okay, I see what you're doing there. Nice.
yep.
See, they take what's left of the Invisible Hand and manage to fly it down to Coruscant, and we get another happy landing, and all's good in the world. And they go off to celebrate with the politicians, and we get the reuniting of Padme and Anakin, and the fantastic news that seems to scare Anakin shitless is the fact that Padme's pregnant, and very far along as well by the look of it. So the impacting news, and he's trembling with fear, but of what's going on, which it begs to always makes me laugh, especially when, like I said, when you've watched other things in context with it. So the end of the Clone Wars episodes of season 7, when they're chatting on the hologram with each other, when Rex is kind of stood outside keeping guard, and they're chatting, you can clearly see fucking Padme's pregnant in the hologram. Like, Anakin does not fucking notice this at all. It's like, she's a good 5-6 months pregnant there, buddy. That's like, how did you not notice that fucking bump sticking out of someone who is generally a very slight, skinny character? So your observation powers as a Jedi kind of suck right now, mate. To be fair,
Come
on. But again, dealing with the Senate and stuff like that is always been a slightly needed but boring part of Star Wars. Apart from maybe someone like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma that we do get to see in this episode a little bit as well. But obviously, going through the film, the next bits when we get like Anakin and Padme deciding that they're going to raise the kids on Naboo, but then we find out that Anakin is having his visions of the future where he sees Padme dying in childbirth, and he tells that these were like the ones he had about his mum before she died, and that's where we see the real sort of bit of Anakin kicking in, where he's like, I will do whatever possible to make sure this does not happen. It's the beginning of the end, so to speak. I always like to class that bit as always annoys me though that, like, because he goes to Yoda, doesn't he, Anakin, and he's like, I've been having visions of or premonitions of the future about someone that I care about dying in child or dying and whatever. And obviously, Yoda tells him, you've got to train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Is this just another pitfall of the way that the Jedi approach things, or did Yoda need to take a different approach? Because he could clearly knowing what he does about Anakin and how he senses what Anakin has been through previously, he must have known that this was not going to be the right tactic and that this would actually work.
He had to have known, and then it is annoying, and it's part of that, the Jedi lineage where it's just like, you can't have attachment, but it's like, dude, like, you obviously know that's not going to work for Anakin. Obviously no. Like, you got to be like, hey, you need to, like, talk to me like we're doing right now, and then we need to go about this together, because I mean, especially with Anakin, if you sense the dark side, don't you want to kind of figure that out and get that away from him? I mean, that's a weird thing, it ties in even with Quinlan Voss's character. Like, Yoda and Mace sent Quinlan to go with Asajj Ventress to captivate Dooku. But in the book, again, it's like Yoda knew that Quinlan was actually going to turn to the dark side. It was almost inevitable. So it's just like, sometimes Yoda just kind of he just grinds my gears a little bit. But I understand, because he's, when you don't have attachment, things are, you look at life differently. It's more you're, sailing through.
Yeah.
As if you're worried about something, that's obviously going to block you from, being the best you can. So, but that's just how the Jedi are. So yeah, I think it's 50-50, but definitely more towards the Jedi being the way they are.
And then we get the the manipulation of Palpatine to Anakin. So he's met him in his office and he tells him that he needs his help, and that he wants him to be his personal representative on the Jedi Council. And this is a strange one, because this seems to be nothing that the Jedi have ever done before. They don't take personal representatives of the Supreme Chancellor onto the Council. They don't have this sort of liaison. It's not something that's normally done. but the Jedi know how much they need Anakin because of his strength in the Force, and Palpatine is in that position to obviously manipulate him to be in that position. So one side, Palpatine just being the master tactician again, by knowing how he's manipulating Anakin by going, this is your seat onto the council, or your way to get onto the council. They'll make you a master, and the council fucking need you. And the council go, yep, we need you. But and then obviously we get the scene, where the lovely scene where they're like, you've got a seat on the council, but we do not grant you, the rank of master. Which is Anakin's just, what? That just straight faced, what? And he's like, how could you be on the council not being a master? It's outrageous. And it's like,
it's unfair.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be fair, if I was him, but knowing that Samuel L. Jackson himself is sat on the council, would this not have been the better response for him? Though it's just.
Oh man, that's where George Lucas just takes that second and just has him go, motherfucker. Come on.
But yeah, I mean, obviously the intricacies of the council and the way they do things, it does seem pretty fucking random that you would grant someone a seat on the council without them being a master, even if it's someone like Anakin. It just seems it was a fucking outrageous decision, surely.
Yeah, because what would especially to Anakin, like, what would the point be? And obviously Palpatine's like, well, they're not showing you any, happiness. So here, come over here and I'll show you everything you need to know. Like, I'll make you seem important. So, I mean, it's kind of on the Jedi, man. You gotta, if someone with, Anakin's proven talent and him having Ahsoka on his side was one of the biggest things that could have molded Anakin into the, cunning and responsible character he is by the end of the Clone Wars, obviously before the Order 66 happens. But, I mean, Ahsoka definitely helped him out. So I don't know why they want to, he's a master, just let him have that. So.
Just ridiculous, to be fair. But, obviously he's kicking off still to Kenobi afterwards, isn't he? And Kenobi's like, you've been given a great honour. Like, to be on the council at your age has never been done before. He's, 22, isn't he, in this film? Nearly 23. So a 22-year-old to be granted a seat on the council is pretty phenomenal. So, yeah, it's one of those things, and you see it from both sides. But like, if you're going to just make him a fucking master, he was obviously ready for it. Really, like, he wasn't going to learn too much more under the tutelage of Kenobi. Kenobi's taking him as far as he can go. Really, you can't balance him out the way that he needs to be balanced out, and just why not have the council around him instead to do that and give him what he needs to feel that satisfaction. But there's a point I want to talk about in this is that Anakin's having all these emotions. He's not been made a master. He's had this chat. We're going to go back to it, but the chat with the story of Darth Plagueis, chat with Palpatine, and so he knows that there are things that he doesn't know about the Force. The Jedi won't share with him. He knows there is more to the Force, and he's feeling that craving for power because he feels like, obviously, he wants to stop Padme dying in childbirth. And he has that chat with Padme where he's like, something's wrong. I'm not the Jedi I'm supposed to be. He's like, I want more, and I know that I shouldn't. I feel like I'm losing control. And I get pissed at Padme in this scene every single time because she kind of just dismisses it.
Yeah.
She's just like, what are you talking about? And she's like, Obi-Wan and the council trust you with their lives. You put too much pressure on yourself. Just calm down and let it go. Fuck me, man. That is gaslighting to the extreme, is it not? I mean, like, just making you believe there's no problem when he's just stood in front of you and told you one of the biggest problems the Jedi could have. He wants more power. He's craving it. He's not feeling he's going down the right path, and she just dismisses him out of hand. Fuck me. This makes me hate Padme in this film. It really does.
Yeah, man. Because it's like imagine if he's like, okay, listen, like, you're going to die. Like, straight up. That's what I see. It's the same. You are in my mom's shoes right now. And it's not just one person dying. It's the unborn child. So what, like, come on, what do we got going here? And yeah, I agree with you, man. Just the way she's just like just combing her hair, like, oh yeah, it's fine. Like, it's like, this all could have been prevented like 4 different times in the movie. But, like we said earlier, it's part of the story. We know what happens, but it's just like, man, like, how do you guys not see? It's plain as day. Like he's literally telling you that he needs help.
It's makes me so mad because I then attribute there are many things that contributed to Anakin's fall to the dark side. His lust for power, in a way, Palpatine's manipulation, the fact that Anakin was always a slave to somebody, whether it was slavers or the Jedi or whoever. But in this film, I think Padme contributes to such a huge way in this, because she just doesn't seem to, like, fucking episode 2, he slaughters an entire village of people and she kind of brushes it off.
Yeah.
Like, how are you not realizing that, one, you're married to a mass murderer? Like, does that really turn you on that much that you've got to go in with him? But at the same point, it's like the guy's having a fucking breakdown of like everything he holds close to him and the beliefs that he's supposed to have as a fucking Jedi Knight. And you're just like, no, it's fine, don't worry about it. You're just putting a bit too much pressure on yourself. I think that's a bit more than pressure. That's a fucking collapse of self. It makes me so mad that she just dismisses him like that. But anyway, before I start ranting more about it, let's recap to that absolutely epic scene. So Anakin's told that we sort of know where Grievous is. Go and tell. Always like report some news, because they ask him to spy, don't they, on Palpatine?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, this wasn't part of the council session. We want you to do this secretly. And Anakin's pissed because he's like, you're asking me to spy on a mentor and a friend. And Kenobi's like, oh, it's not like that. The council is asking you to do something to help us. Something's not right with Palpatine. But they go and tell him to give him some news. And so obviously he goes to see him in the theatre. And we get this fantastic scene between Palpatine and Anakin, where Palpatine feeds him the, have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? It's not a story the Jedi would tell you. And here, Ian McDiarmid really plays up to his theatre training, I feel. He delivers this scene so fantastically well that it doesn't matter how many times I fucking hear it, I get chills every single time I hear it. It's just absolutely tremendous, this scene. It is one of the best. Obviously, it's become one of the most famous, one of the most quoted. But, to me, it is up there in top 3 Star Wars scenes of all time. It's so well done. The slow manipulation of Anakin to, he could save the ones he loved from dying. And he's like, Anakin's like, oh, okay. And it's not a power that you can learn from the Jedi. How else am I going to get it? Just Palpatine twisting that knife into that manipulation more and more. Fuck me, I love this scene. What about you?
Oh yeah, and one of the things I really took from is Palpatine didn't even look at Anakin until after the story was told. That dude just you can feel that he just loves that he was he's who he's talking about, like in the story, and his master was the shit, but he is the real shit. Like he's the real deal, and the way he's talking about himself and just kind of loves himself that much. That's scary, and you can tell Anakin's it's enough as a reality for Palpatine that he did that, but it's also telling Anakin a story that he's just hooked on. Like, whoa, like how can I do that? Like I'm in this similar situation, which is it's just one of those chess versus checkers thing that Palpatine does, and just kills it again. So yeah, man, it's a beautiful, beautiful scene.
It's just so well done with like that deep guttural sort of sound of the opera in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the bubble opera or whatever the fuck was actually going on there, just that scene kind of insignificant in a way, even though it creates a great scene, but just that guttural music in the background that just whoa going on, it just adds to the aura of what's being said in it. And yeah, I don't think I can ever get over that scene, to be fair, because it does just get me every single time. I mean, if I could probably have that as a ringtone, I would never actually answer the phone because I'd just be listening to it the entire time. But then moving on from there is where things obviously start to kick off, because they're like, we found Grievous, and he tells Anakin that he'd be surprised if they didn't pick him for it because he's the best one for it. Again, master manipulating for Palpatine, because he knows they're not going to send Anakin, they're going to send a more experienced person. And obviously, fires back in Anakin's face in the council meeting, because the council are like, no, we will decide who we send, not the the Supreme Chancellor. And Kenobi's there stroking his moustache, showing off his brand new boots that he's got on. Oh, so I love that when he's got his feet up and he's just showing off his new boots. And they're like, what about the droid attack on the Wookiees? And Yoda decides. I mean, moving on from there is where things just start to snowball, doesn't it? So you get you get Grievous going. You get Kenobi going off to fight Grievous. Obviously, Yoda goes off to Kashyyyk, and we get a beautiful planet full of Wookiees.
Yes.
In their battle against the droid army. The Kenobi Grievous battle, so to speak, is again one of those fantastic moments, because we do just get Kenobi's assessing the situation when Grievous is sending the rest of the separatist leaders off to Mustafar, and he just drops down in the middle of them, and he's classic hello there. And then I even love the attention to detail in these scenes, because when they're having their chat and Grievous goes to light up his sabers, you get those. I don't know if you remember it. There's two battle droids in the background behind Grievous. One's not really paying attention, and one of the battle droids kind of nudges the other and points to Grievous as he then takes his sabers out and lights them up. And they're like, "Oh!" So even the attention to detail of the background of the droids, just hey, fucking look at what he's about to do. So, I just even love that. To be fair. But I mean, tell me about your thoughts on the Grievous Kenobi battle, because it takes us all over that particular scenery. Four lightsabers to start with that Kenobi seems to chop down pretty damn quick, ending with their so uncivilized combat at the end.
Yeah, see, it's I do love how that just opens up, and knowing the story once again. Grievous is telling all the other people, hey, go to Mustafar, it's going to be safe there, knowing damn well that's going to be the first place. Palpatine's going to send Anakin if he's able to turn him. And yep, sure enough, they all get slaughtered. So everyone in that scene is just dead in the next few scenes. Just crazy. But Obi-Wan dropping down and just hey, let's party, dude. Let's get this on, because you're causing way too much and it's been way too long. So let's get this done. And I think it's just so tight. Every time Grievous just kind of shrugs his shoulders and just puts his arms up and just expands and just boom, 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 boom. Just 4 lightsabers. You think double blade, is enough. How about 4 at once? So, Obi-Wan obviously handling, Obi-Wan things, getting it done. And it's just obvious. It's obvious that, Obi-Wan comes out alive, but the way Obi-Wan did it almost so easily. And it's just you got to give Obi-Wan's, credit when it's due. He just basically ran through him. And yeah, if Grievous didn't, run away on his little circle sphere bike or whatever that thing was, he would have been, toast a long time before that. So, and hey, you gotta love Obi-Wan leaving in Grievous's starship. That thing is clean. So it's dope to know that Obi-Wan was yeah, I kill you and I'll take your ship, because I can't get out of here.
Was great, to be fair. And you gotta love the fact that he ends up killing Grievous with a blaster, and he is just so uncivilized. Just always
get this out of here.
Chuckle every time, even though it's predictable. But then obviously this leads us down to starts down the dark path of this particular film, doesn't it? So, word. Oh, that's it, wasn't it? First of all, so Anakin is having a chat with Palpatine, and Palpatine is in order to do what you need to do, you have to know the dark side of the Force. And he's my master taught me everything about the Force. Even the nature of the dark side. And you know the dark side? And it's revealed, obviously, Palpatine is the Sith Lord, or Anakin took his time working it out, but revealed there. And again, I think Ian McDiarmid uses his theatre training great in this particular scene, because he just lays it on thick for Anakin, and coming across as this, still the friendly mentor that he's always been to Anakin before, as we know, he's not really that person. He's the sinister emperor, so to speak. He's use my knowledge, I beg you. He's together, you can save your wife from certain death. And it's just the way that he leads with that line and the smile he has on his face when he does it, knowing that it's just tormenting Anakin and that this would tip him over the edge.
Yeah.
Utterly fantastic. I think Ian McDiarmid in this film is one of my favourite performances of all time. And some people may think I'm a bit crazy saying that, but I think just in general, his performance in this particular film, in the nature of the film itself, is so outrageously good. Just the manipulation of Anakin. We're going to talk about so much already, but his manipulation is so good in this film. It is unreal, and this scene is just up there as another one example.
And the fact that Anakin just like ignites his lightsaber and was like, you seriously just played everyone, and people, and like you got to think of all the people that have died because of Palpatine, and it freaking pisses me off that Fives was killed. God damn it! And it's just like that's just one that stuck out. But it's just like all of these loved characters and innocent people already that have just died because of Palpatine, and the war was fake. There was really no reason for the war, and they tried to mask it with politics and make it that was the reason why we're even in the Clone Wars in general. And it's another damn chess versus checkers. Palpatine golden award, like he it just doesn't miss, and it's just crazy, man. Like, and then the way Anakin's like, but Padme means everything to me. She's all I have now. And it's just like, of course he's gonna give in, and it's like, Palpatine, you bastard, man.
Did it again.
Leave him alone.
Of course, Anakin goes running back to tell Mace Windu and the rest of the council that that Palpatine is the Sith Lord. And of course we get Samuel L. Jackson's classic reaction to this. He's like, I've just learned a terrible truth, that Chancellor Palpatine is the Sith Lord we've been looking for. And Mace just turns to him like, a Sith Lord?
Yeah. If anyone else would have told Mace that, he would have been like, oh, okay, we're going right now. And it's like, but it's Anakin, of course.
And so obviously he's like, we've just heard word that Kenobi beat Grievous. And so we're going, a few of us are going over now to make sure he returns powers to the Senate. And obviously Anakin's like, that's not going to happen, mate. But, you need me to take him down. Anakin obviously trying to cover his own ass by saying that even if you arrest him and put him on trial, I still need him to fucking help me save my wife.
Yeah.
And obviously Mace telling him to go and wait in the council chamber until they return. Don't know how you feel about this, but there's a popular theory going on that, if they'd either arrested or killed Palpatine and Anakin had been sat in the chamber waiting when Mace returned, that he would have made him a master there and then, which is why he asked him to wait specifically in the council chamber, so he could do that, because he trusted it. It would then trust him. So I don't know if that's something that you've heard or whether you agree with.
See, I'm going to say I believe that. Because, earlier when it's Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Mace Windu in the gunship, and they're flying, and then, Mace Windu does that, I don't trust him.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, dude, I am all for that. And I've heard something similar to that, but not the way you worded it. So, yeah, 100%. That just shows, he's responsible. He's gaining his own ground. And basically, Mace is like the second head on the council. So if anything goes through him, it would probably go okay with Yoda. So, man, just crazy.
And then it happens. The battle in Palpatine's quarters. They all show up, and in the name of the Galactic Senate, you are under arrest, my lord. I just love this scene again because it's just the back and forth where he's just like, "I am the Senate," and like, "Not yet." Just classic defiance by the Jedi. It's treason then, and whips out his fucking lightsaber from his sleeve. I mean, just the fact that in Palpatine's quarters in this film, or the office bit that we see him in, there are Sith artifacts everywhere.
Yeah.
And the Jedi being so fucking blind to it. I mean, obviously we see him early in the film that he's looking at plans of the Death Star when Anakin shows up to chat to him at some point.
Just closes it down.
The bit where he's telling Anakin, or it was revealed to Anakin that he's the Sith Lord, there's a big mural in the background, and that's of the Great Sith and Jedi War from like 3,000 years before. When the four Jedi walk into Palpatine's office, he's got two urns by the doorway. They're Sith artifacts that used to hold his lightsabers in. fuck me, the guy's got fucking Sith shit everywhere, and they didn't fucking clock quicker. Again, the fucking council are dickheads. My recurring theme during the prequel conversation.
Yeah.
But this fucking battle obviously goes insanely quick. I mean, it's always been said to us that generally the fights that happen are a lot quicker in real time. They've obviously slowed it down for us as cinema goes to be able to watch it. He has his what was it, like 720 twirl that he does off at the start, Palpatine, with his Sith scream. And it's actually written into law that the Sith scream is something that disorientates and confuses your opponents. So that's why he was able to strike the first two down so quickly, because the Sith scream confused and disrupted their thoughts and stuff. So he was able to strike them down before they could even move. And good old Kit Fisto, your man Kit Fisto, lasts about another 3 seconds than the others before he gets fucking cut down. And then obviously it's 1-on-1, and as we know, Mace Windu uses Form 7 for Pard, which hacks into his emotions, so he's able to take on those technically with better form or stronger than him, and sort of counter it back. And they have their battle. It's the greatest debate I think of Episode 3 is: did Palpatine deliberately lose to Mace, knowing that Anakin was about to show up? Or did Anakin show up just at the right time because Mace technically had beaten Palpatine?
See, I feel like it could be all of I feel like it could be all of them. For the longest time, and like even today, I still think that Mace just, I think that he, using the form he did, I feel like he let himself tap in a little bit to the dark side. That way he was able to retaliate a little bit because, Revan had a purple lightsaber, like lore with, the color purple in Star Wars is, being able to wield both sides of the Force. And I think Mace was just able to be, just as much, if not a little bit more defensive for all of the strikes from Palpatine. And I just, with Anakin showing up at the right time, I don't know if they felt something through the Force, but I bet Anakin was just too eager and was like, what's taking so long? And was just like, I gotta go. So, and you can tell in Anakin's walk, the way he's, speed walking to his ship, he's anxious. Great acting. That's insane. Just those little details like that. But, Mace had him down. It's just very unfortunate of the outcome.
I think he had him beat, to be fair.
Yeah.
And it was the timing of Anakin showing up was just a bit too on the nose, unfortunately. And then obviously Palpatine still convincing Anakin even to the last moment there that he wasn't as bad as he actually was, and he was, and obviously Anakin trying to save him because he wants to learn the power to save Padme and stuff, and obviously leads him to cutting off Mace's arm before we get the true reveal of Palpatine and unlimited power. Before we say goodbye to Mace Windu out the window.
No, 8-year-old Brandon was so sad.
And then obviously the big moment where he officially turns. This was probably a moment I think could have been better done by George Lucas and the producers. I feel like this was the sort of weak part because all of a sudden Anakin's like, "What have I done?" And he's like, "I pledge my teachings to you, my master." Sort of. That was all a little bit weak. I felt. I thought that wasn't quite as good as it could have been, but then we get that obviously enhanced again, sort of guttural voice from Palpatine. Because he's now sort of he's in his full Sith.
Yeah, dude looks like shit.
Dude went from being like 55 to about 200 in the space of like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And obviously Anakin's turn. Tell me what you're thinking at this moment in time. Anakin's official turn there and then, and he's named Darth Vader.
Man, it's such, and that's part of what makes this movie great. Obviously the little chippy parts of like, oh, what have I done? And then it's like, I'm gonna think about my wife real quick. I will. I'm yours. It's just what makes it's what connects, 1 and 2, and then the what's already been seen from episode 3 and 4, 5, and 6. It shows why and how Anakin is Darth Vader, and the way it's just done, it's perfect. The way he just looks up to Palpatine, knowing that Anakin is defeated as well. Like, he just went against someone who's been teaching him for, the last 14 years, 15 years. And the way he's just, had to put everything that he's ever done just behind him. Now he's going, down the path that Obi-Wan even says that he went down the path that he was, sworn to go against. And I think Anakin is just having a, come to life moment where he's just like, I fucked up, but I will fuck up for Padme, basically. And it's nuts, man. Like, just thinking back to it, and it's something you see and you'll never, forget, seeing the movie a million times. It's just like, God damn, dude. Like, fuck.
It's just an unreal moment where it does bring everything full circle, in terms of, if you've watched it from the originals to the prequels in that sort of way, the full circle of Anakin, of Vader, being Anakin and turning to Vader. It's so emotional. It still gets me every time, even if the writing isn't the best done at that part. But again, I think that the gravitas of Palpatine's voice in this moment kind of just covers all of that in a way, because it's just like, the Force is strong with you. And then obviously they chat about what they're going to have to do next, and it brings about one of the saddest moments in all of Star Wars. So, he's like, you're going to have to go to the temple, wipe out all the Jedi that are there, and then go to Mustafar and kill the Separatist leaders. And he's like, the rest of the Jedi across the galaxy, their betrayal will be dealt with. And you can see even in Anakin's face when he's told he's got to go to the temple and kill everyone there, he's kind of like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want to have to do this, but I've kind of like, I've backed myself into a corner now. Like, it was just literally, I remember it being like, that shot is only for like a brief second where you see his face when he's told he's got to go to the temple and kill everyone. But that facial expression delivered so much thought. I thought in that time, because he's like realised he's backed into a corner, there's nothing he can do now, and he's got to follow through with it.
Yep.
There's nothing he can do. So it's time for Order 66. And you know me, I'm a Sith guy. I've got a couple of Sith tattoos. I've always said if I had to choose between one or the other, I would fall to the dark side incredibly quickly. I would always be a Sith. But even I always get severely sad at having to go through Order 66 every time I watch this film. And it starts obviously with Kenobi, although obviously we know Kenobi survives, and then we go through all of them. Kiela Mundi.
God, that was so sad too. The way he's just like, "Come on, guys! Like, come on, we're almost there," And then he just kind of, he can just feel the sudden stop of his battalion he had with him, and it's just like he turns around and is like, "What the hell?" And then all of a sudden, I think the worst part for me is how he was deflecting most of them. And then just that one hit him, and it was just it. And it's like, no, man, God damn. Get you.
Yeah. Plo Koon shot out the sky. Which makes it sadder after having watched the Clone Wars series, because he's obviously a lot more prominent. You get to know him a bit more.
Yeah, they give him so much.
Probably the most brutal one that we see in this film, Ayla Secura, on Felucia, who's shot down by Commander Bly, and the fact that they just keep on firing at her after they've already shot her down was fucking brutal.
Yeah, dude.
As well as going with the long, heavy rumours that Bly and Sakura were sleeping with each other or in a secret relationship. I know that's a rumour that's been flying around for a long time. That was never. I don't know where the hell that came from, but the fact of where that was put into, because I know it's not technically law, but if you add that into the fact of it, and the fact that these clones don't have any way to stop Order 66, all the chip is in their head, and so then all of a sudden he's like, the Jedi have been betraying the Republic, you've got to kill them all regardless. And he has to turn down and shoot down the woman that he may love. That's pretty fucking brutal. And the way that they do it, maybe that's what he does out of anger. He's like telling everyone, carry on shooting, boys. Like, it's just turn her into dust.
Yeah.
And obviously we see others falling around the galaxy. And obviously then we get Anakin at the temple. Elaborated on a bit more in the obviously the Mandalorian and in the Kenobi series of what Anakin's doing.
Love those callbacks. Love it.
And then the famous one where we get to obviously the he's in the council chamber and he sees the younglings in there who are carrying Master Skywalker, what are we going to do? And he just ignites his saber. And this is a turning point for two ways. First of all, when Anakin ignites his saber in that council chamber, they no longer use the sound of Anakin's lightsaber igniting. They switch over and use the sound of Vader's blade igniting from the original trilogy films.
Oh, wow.
So it's to signify the change of Anakin to Vader. They no longer use Anakin's lightsaber sound, they use Vader's sound. So that's one big one. And again, referring back to the Revenge of the Sith novel, when Anakin goes into that room and he sees the kids in the chamber, he starts to have second thoughts about what he's doing. And he is on the verge of actually going, I shouldn't be doing this. This is wrong on so many levels. I should not be doing this. Then that little shit calls him Master Skywalker, and he's instantly reminded that the council did not make him a master. And he goes, okay, fuck all of you anyway, and kills all the kids.
Man.
So that one little kid had not called him Master Skywalker, there was a chance that Anakin wouldn't have followed through and done all of this. That he was about to sort of go, actually, I don't want to do this. No matter what the cost, I don't want to kill all these kids. And then all that rage and anger and hurt came flooding back from not being made a master. And he's just like, you know what? Fuck the Jedi after all. So I blame the little kid.
Yeah. God damn it, kid. Just shut your mouth. Don't say anything. But see, man, that's what some of the, there's Star Wars haters, Star Wars fans that even hate Star Wars. And it's like, what's going on? They never mention these little details. They always go after, somebody or something for why they didn't like a project. But if you look at just some of these small details that these writers include, it's like, man, there's a bigger story being told. And just like that, those were two things right there that I didn't even know about. And just thinking about it, it's like, man, like, holy shit. Like it can't get, any more perfect. But there are some scenes, we get to see Grogu getting saved by Keller and Beck. We see some of the 501st going through the beginning of Kenobi, seeing that Jedi with her young group with Reva as a youngling. Anakin going through basically everything that happens at the Jedi Temple. You see some of those moments that lead even to when Anakin was on Mustafar killing all the separatists. There's some shots you can see like where his hood's up, and as he's slashing, you can see Anakin like having a crying face, and it's just like even the separatists did their thing. He doesn't want to be doing this at all, but he has to. He basically swore into it, and it's just like, man, it's so emotional, and that feeling never goes away.
And it's the score that good old John Williams puts with it as well. The Anakin's Betrayal music, I think it's called, isn't it? The soundtrack piece that goes with that is, again, John Williams throughout all of Star Wars and all through his entire life, no matter what project he's done, has always been obviously a legend and produced some of the most outstanding bits of the soundtrack of all time. But this film, again, he's outrageous because we've got the Battle of the Heroes soundtrack. But Anakin's Betrayal, it's just unbelievable, and it just all goes together so well, but it's so emotional at the same time. The only time in my entire Star Wars fandom that I feel bad for the Jedi, Order 66. So they go from having 10,000 Jedi to, I think, canonically less than 100 at this moment in time, from what we know anyway. So it's Order 66 is done. The Jedi are pretty much decimated. Yoda's managed to survive on Kashyyyk by cutting off General Gree's head. By the way, General Gree, obviously decapitated by Yoda in that scene, for anyone that doesn't also know, is if you're ever watching Star Wars Rebels, when Thrawn is in his office a lot of the time in Rebels, he has Commander Gree's helmet as one of the pieces of art in his office. So it's just something to look out for if you ever see that in the background.
Have you ever seen Nardwar on YouTube?
No.
So he's called the Canadian Serviette. So what he does is he researches all of these artists, like predominantly rappers, and he'll interview them, but he'll tell them facts of like things that they never knew anyone else knew about. And he like blows their mind. That's you with the Star Wars facts today. I'm like, dude, what is going on? You keep getting something new every time. So I was gonna say you're like the Star Wars Nardwar.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's just these films, mate. I know far too much about them. I've read too much, watched too much of it. I know far too much about it than I should do, to be fair. So, so obviously Kenobi survived. He meets up with Yoda, and they're obviously like, we've got to go find out what's happened. So, and obviously they've got the signal going out from the Jedi Temple telling everyone to return as a trap. Like, let's go sort that out. So they go back when the Senate's in session, and Palpatine is giving his roaring speech about the betrayal of the Jedi. And
it has left me scarred
and deformed. But obviously, that's his big announcement that the Republic will be reorganized into the First Galactic Empire. And Padme gives her a whole, this is how liberty dies. Not with something, but with thunderous applause.
Thunderous applause.
And Kenobi and Yoda are at the Jedi Temple. They're sorting out the signal to warn everyone away, and that's when Kenobi's like, I've got to know. I need to know who did this. There's kids around with fucking lightsaber marks in them. We need to know who did this. And they watch the security recordings and they find, obviously, it's Anakin, and it breaks, obviously, Kenobi's heart. And they're like, we've got to end them. And he's like, send me to fight the Emperor. He's like, I will not kill Anakin. He's like my brother.
Yeah.
And Yoda's like, bitch, please, you ain't strong enough to fight Palpatine. He's like, that could only be me.
Yeah, good luck with that, buddy, because, yeah.
How would that have gone, though? Let's just say Yoda agrees and goes, okay, I will go to fight Anakin, and you can go to Palpatine. Let's just assume, for the sake of argument, Palpatine beats Kenobi. Low diff. It's a fairly easy win for him, to be fair, I think. Who wins out of Yoda and Anakin?
Yoda.
Really?
I think even with... Palpatine takes Kenobi easy. I think it would, they'd have their sparring and stuff, but it wouldn't last long. But I think Yoda, like, I can see, a 50-50, but I think Yoda would have that edge on Anakin, even though Kenobi ultimately had the edge, just because, he was like, that's the only person that Anakin knew of, as a man, as a master and apprentice. But with Yoda, I feel like he would just overall be able to take down Anakin, because obviously he's neck and neck with the Emperor, but it wasn't enough. But I feel like with Anakin not being as close to as to Palpatine with his power, I think Yoda would have been able to beat Anakin. I don't think it would have been easy by any means, because Anakin's finally using this new power. But yeah, I think Yoda would have came out with it.
I think given Anakin's arrogance and his new abilities and confidence, probably would have also been a downfall, wouldn't it? Because it was the downfall with Kenobi as it was. And so that against Yoda, I think Yoda capitalizes on that probably quicker than Kenobi was able to.
Yeah.
Because Kenobi's still wrapped up in the emotion of the situation, whereas Yoda would be a bit more pragmatic, I think. And we're probably take him down a bit quicker, using his arrogance against him. So that leaves a final showdown again between Palpatine and Yoda, then, if one on each side goes. So we know how that went. So again, we just assume that the Empire kind of wins overall. It's just each side is one less person to help them out moving forward. Palpatine's not going to care, because at the end of the day, he doesn't really even really want an apprentice, doesn't he? I mean, he never cared for the rule of two. He never planned to let that happen to him. He always planned that he would live forever through Sith alchemy. So I don't think he would have been a bit pissed off if Anakin had died in that situation, but I don't think he would have cared, because he still would have been ruling the galaxy, and he would have been able to do it without having to have an apprentice that could potentially overpower him in the future.
Right.
So,
and see, that's kind of why I don't care about Palpatine coming back in Rise of Skywalker, because it's like that's what he basically did his whole life, was to where he was able to live forever. That was the whole purpose of taking down his master, was he learned that art. He's one with the dark side of the Force. So that's why I'm like, I mean, somehow Palpatine returned. It's like, well, they didn't know that Palpatine was like this legit like Sith Lord, like Lord of the Sith. So yeah, like, I mean, that I feel like you nerf Palpatine by saying like, oh, that's dumb, he came back. Like if you know Palpatine, it's very obvious for him to come back.
Yeah, I mean, slight sidetrack. I never had a problem. I was talking about it in an episode I did recently with Dave from Why So Sidious, and the fact that I don't necessarily have a problem with the somehow Palpatine return line. So I'm like, how are a bunch of Resistance fighters going to know how a Sith Lord returned?
Yeah.
They're not going to know the ins and outs. They're not going to know the intricate details. It's not like Palpatine did it in his galaxy-wide announcement. So I never had as much of a problem with that line, no matter as much as everyone else seemed to, because I'm like, they do explain it in the film how he came back anyway. It's not like it was done on some galaxy-wide announcement that he was going to be taking charge. So
exactly.
Palpatine's, as you said, Lord of the Sith for a reason. So, but then obviously we get Anakin. He heads off to Mustafar to go and kill the Separatist leaders and make himself strong enough on the dark side. Again, kind of a brutal few scenes, to be fair. He just shows up, uses the Force to close the doors and get everyone in, and then just goes around slaughtering all of them. And at the same time, Kenobi's obviously chatting to Padme, trying to find out where he is, where he's gone. And there's always one of my favorite memes came out of this bit, because obviously where Anakin's like, Kenobi saying to Padme, he's like, Anakin has turned to the dark side. I saw a security hologram of him killing younglings. And there's two things about this scene that always crack me up. You see, obviously, when Kenobi says that line, he covers his face like this, which you think he's being distraught. Ewan McGregor himself has said that during filming that scene, for some reason, him and he just couldn't stop laughing when delivering that line. So he had to put his hand over his mouth to stop himself from laughing out loud and to cover himself from smirking on screen, while trying to keep his eyes serious but cover the smirk that he had on his face. So obviously Padme could deliver her lines and be fine with it. But then there's a meme I always see that it has that, but it's like, I saw a security hologram of Anakin killing younglings, and it shoots to a scene of Anakin sitting in a field with a beer called Younglings and just empty bottles everywhere and him drunk. It always made me crack up a little bit. But Anakin sort of completes his journey to the dark side here at this point, doesn't he? Because he's killed everyone. We see him stood outside looking over the lava river, and that sort of tear rolls down his cheek as he realizes he's kind of trapped in this life now. I guess he's screwed essentially. He's gone from being a slave of the Hutts to a slave of Watto to a slave to the Jedi. Now he's going to be a slave to the Sith again. My boy
just keeps going.
He's always going to be a slave to someone, unfortunately. So then it's time for the big showdowns. So let's discuss first, Yoda Palpatine. We touched on it briefly already. They sort of do go toe for toe. Palpatine bringing out all of his Force, lightning, unlimited power, and Yoda being the wise one with the Force that he is, able to absorb that. And it essentially really does end in a stalemate, but just kind of Yoda decides that he isn't really going to be able to defeat him outright and just runs away. Which is very unlike Yoda, which I think is supposed to be the point of it. He's been weakened in the Force by Order 66 going on, and he's feeling every Jedi around the galaxy being killed. And then he's kind of like has this assumption that I can't really defeat the Emperor, and has to run away. I mean, your thoughts on their particular battle? Because he starts the battle so confident, doesn't he? Turns up at his fucking office, like knocks out the two royal guards.
Yeah.
And he's like, your rule is at an end. And just starts off really confident, doesn't let him leave, and then ends up running away at the end.
Yeah, I mean, Yoda was able to feel everything, going on throughout the galaxy, and he knows that it's dwindling down. It's basically, I don't know if he's able to feel the ones that are still alive, but I mean, he like he has Obi-Wan still, he has obviously Balin's skull is around somewhere, unless he left the Jedi Order before that. Maybe he's one of the 20. That would be kind of cool. That left, like with Dooku and all them. Quinlan Vos was on Kashyyyk when that happened, so maybe he's just like, well, he's probably going to do his own thing because he's never really at the Jedi Temple anyways. So, I mean, I think Yoda just knows it's almost impossible for them to, be diminished like that and, beat the one guy who did all of this. Like, if he's taken down hundreds, how's he going to take down this one? So I think the way that goes and Yoda going into exile, it makes sense. And, he failed, for the 800 years he was with the Jedi, and just all of a sudden after so long, that's it. Crazy.
It's crazy, to be fair. The Grand Master of the Jedi just running away and going into exile. I mean, the Clone Wars again gives us some information sort of after the fact, isn't it? That he overall knew what was going to happen in terms of the Republic, or the Jedi at least, would lose the Clone Wars, and that they wouldn't necessarily be able to defeat the Sith there and then, and that it was playing the long game essentially for the Jedi to win overall. But even still, sort of like, he's obviously trying in the moment, isn't he, to win the battle. He's not, saying, okay, it's fine if I lose right now because, I was told by the wills of the Force that overall, or shown, a vision that overall we will win in the long run, just not right now. It's kind of like, no, you kind of need to win now, to be fair. Let's just save the galaxy 30 years of hurt first, shall we?
Yeah.
But he's not able to do that. And then we get to the Battle of the Heroes, Anakin versus Kenobi. Padme shows up on Mustafar, and they have their little chat, and she's, you're breaking my heart. You're going down a path I can't follow. And he's like, because of Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan stood there with his power pose.
Yeah,
at the top of the ramp.
You talking about me?
Did someone say my name? And obviously you get the almost infamous scene really of Anakin choking Padme, and then you get the most quoted probably conversation in all of Star Wars, outside of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis. I know it heart for heart. I don't know if you do, but it's one of those ones that even on TikTok, when someone just puts like the initials of every letter up on the screen, I'm like, yeah, I know what that is.
I know those.
And so obviously, I've brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire. And it's always funny because, like, Anakin's like, "Don't make me kill you," and he's just like, "My allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy." And then he said, only a Sith deals in absolutes, which is an absolute in itself, which always makes me laugh. He's like, "So I will do what I must." And he's like, you will try. And then we get what is officially the longest sword fight in film history. I think it clocks in at 11 minutes in total, obviously taking out the cutscenes where they cut away to Yoda and Palpatine. But 11 minutes something, officially the longest sword fight in film history. Just an epic battle all over. Two people who have known each other for 15 years, know each other like brothers, know how to counteract every single move they've got, and just go at it, heel for toe, for all this time. Another interesting fact, Roy, don't know if you know this, in that epic moment when they're sort of out in sort of battling outside, and they have that infamous moment where they clash and they hold each other's hands up and the lava explodes behind them. Just before that, obviously, Anakin hits Kenobi in the face. During filming, Anakin hits him for real in the face by mistake, which is why you see such a real reaction from Kenobi or Ewan McGregor. He's kind of a little bit shocked that Hayden just punched him in the face, but they decided to, according to George Lucas, keep that shot in because it gave such a real reaction. So it was just like, you get punched in the face by Anakin, and he's like, okay, and then that leads to the shocked moment, and then them to their epic lava exploding moment. So
it's beautiful, man.
Your overall thoughts on the Battle of the Heroes?
Well, I mean, this is, like you said, it's the longest sword, fencing battle that we get in all of cinema. It's it's that good for a reason, and it's that long for a reason. And it's two of our beloved heroes in the galaxy, Obi-Wan, Anakin fighting master versus apprentice. And this isn't easy for Obi-Wan. And it's not easy for Anakin. Obviously, Anakin has done, some of the worst things imaginable, right before these events. But
yeah,
it's like, fighting your big brother or, fighting your father. And it's insane. Or flip the role and you're fighting your own son or, your nephew, someone that you've looked at, after for many years. And then you feel that it's your fault. And that's basically how all of this is coming together. It's the best lightsaber scene, lightsaber battle, anything that has anything to do with a lightsaber. This is the best fight ever.
in all of Star Wars.
All of Star Wars, ever.
Fair. Yeah, I don't think... 'cause everyone generally either picks this or the Vader-Luke battle at the end of Episode 6, I think, is the two best. Both have obviously such emotion attached to them. But in terms of obviously just pure epicness, then yeah, this obviously I think wins out overall. I always feel like in terms of emotional level, the Episode 6 one kind of wins. But in terms of just the pure epicness and maybe overall scenario of following on from Order 66, this is why this one wins as well. Again, the fantastic score that we get from John Williams just amps it up to the max. And of course, Anakin's arrogance at the end of this again becomes his downfall. He tries that move of Kenobi jumping over, and the reason Kenobi as well tells him don't try it when he realizes what Anakin's going to do is because Anakin was obsessed with the battle between Qui-Gon, Kenobi, and Maul from Episode 1. That he didn't get to witness as a kid. He was obsessed with this battle. He studied it all the time. He was obsessed with Kenobi's winning move over Maul, where he jumps over the top of him and slices him in half. And this is why Anakin tries this, because he wants to use Kenobi's own move against him to be able to be the one that kills him. But since Kenobi did this move, he knows perfectly how to combat it.
Yep.
Which is, so he tells Anakin, don't try it. I know what you're going to fucking do, and I'll still beat you anyway. And then Anakin, in his arrogance, tries it, and Kenobi obviously fucking guts him. Well, not quite guts him, but obviously just delimbs him, should we say.
Yeah.
All of his limbs. And again, another epic sort of end conversation with them. You were the chosen one. I loved you, Anakin. You were my brother.
And I feel like every time I see that now, like at being older and you just keep seeing it, you're like, you got to stop, man. It's hitting me right in the heart every single time because it's beautiful acting mixed with, great, combat training that they're doing. And it's one of a kind, man. It's a scene of its own.
And whilst, again, the music is a big added factor to this scene, I came across a TikTok where someone had removed the music. And so you just have the pure dialogue and the sound of obviously like the lava river and everything around them. And my God, it makes it so much more intense, I think, without the music. To just hear them screaming at each other. Kenobi's heartbreak as he tells him that he loved him, and Anakin just screaming how much he hates him whilst getting set on fire. It's no music; it makes it fucking so much worse.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
But then obviously Kenobi's like, time for me to depart. I'm going to leave you to burn to death. Which, in a way, was. I heard somebody else talking about this the other day. Is like, was this a dick move in terms of if this was someone that you grew up with who was essentially like a son or brother to you, and would you really just leave them to burn to death, or could you not give them a quick mercy kill as like the warrior that you've just fought against? Was it a dick move? Because obviously it's he survives in the end and he goes on to cause 25 years of fucking heartache for the galaxy. So, but was it a dick move by Kenobi to walk away? Should he have just given him a quick merciful death there and then, rather than letting him burn to death on the shore of a lava river?
Yeah, and when you think about it, it's just like, why and how could he have done that? But there's a scene that kind of makes me think, differently, is when Anakin first sets on fire. Obi-Wan, looks away and because he can't look anymore. And I feel like just that overall look of knowing that Anakin is down there like that is because of him. But then he thinks again, this is all because of him, though. So, and then he thinks, well, it could have been because of me. So, there's a lot of emotions, and I just feel like, the way he just can't look at him anymore, I feel like that's just part of it. And he's like, well, if he dies here, then I have his lightsaber to, remember, and obviously memories, but yeah, he's never going to be able to unsee what just happened.
True. Obviously, Palpatine comes and they find him and takes him off in his medical capsule, and Kenobi goes off to meet up with Yoda. Again, I don't know why I'm just so full of facts about this particular film for people that don't know it necessarily, but that moment where it cuts to Yoda and he's like, it looks like he's meditating on the ship, and Bail Organa interrupts him to tell him that they've heard from Kenobi. There's a deleted scene, I think it was, or it was in the novel, one of the two, where it shows that in those moments before Bail comes and interrupts him, he's actually meditating and speaking with Qui-Gon Jinn.
Awesome. It's so awesome.
Yeah. So to know that, obviously, because again, he seems to have this afterlife connection with Qui-Gon, because obviously he's the one that reached out to him, or Qui-Gon's the one that reached out through the cosmic force to Yoda, and taught him, or got him to obviously connect with the worlds of the Force in the Clone Wars finale in season 6, that leads him to be able to learn the ability to manifest himself after death. But also in episode 5, episode 6, sorry, when he dies at the start of the film, that blanket that he's wearing in Dagobah in his little hut is Qui-Gon's cape, isn't it?
Yes.
So he seems to have this big sort of connection to Qui-Gon after he died, that he just didn't want to let him go, so to speak, or that he just maybe kept his stuff around in a way. But I want to know how he got the cape, because if you think about it, like, where did he keep that cape for all those years after he died? And then when him and Kenobi snuck back to the temple to change the outgoing message, did he then go to his quarters and like pick up his robe? Because how did he get that when he exiled himself to Dagobah? Like a nice little canon thing there to go, oh, that's Qui-Gon's cape that he's sleeping with. I'm like, he exiled himself to Dagobah. Where the fuck did he get that?
Yeah, and it's like, and if you think about it, it's not like the witches, like they can, like they made Mother Talzin's blade, like, through magic, but like through the Force, you can't bring another, object or create, so it's kind of, couldn't just like teleport it there by any means.
Bit of a random one, but just, I don't know why it popped into my head just then. I'm like, how did he actually get that since he was exiled? But let me get probably the last big, obviously big scene, which is the real starting of Darth Vader in a way, because we obviously have Darth Vader synonymous with the suit and everything. But there's a real mirror to these particular scenes. So you've got Padme giving birth to the twins, and obviously naming them, and then her losing her will to live and dies, and Anakin obviously being put into the suit, and the mirroring in this scene is great, because as Padme is losing the will to live and physically actually dying, is you see Vader's suit get more and more completed. He's put into the helmet. Then as she dies, he rises up on on the board to be Darth Vader in the suit. To me, the mirroring going on in that scene was always fantastic.
Yeah.
And there's a theory I would like to run by you. There's always been this whole, did Padme really die from a broken heart sort of scenario? What was really going on there? I've got two theories. One's just a fun, stupid one, and one's my actual serious theory. So, in episode 2, when they're in the Battle of Geonosis, and she's on the top of the pole, and she jumps off to join Anakin on the back of the bull-type beast.
Right.
Someone actually did like a scientific paper on the amount of force that would happen when she jumped onto that seat from up on the pole, and it would have been enough to like tear her in half essentially, or cause serious internal damage. So someone's like, maybe that jump down from the pole onto the back of that beast with Anakin caused some internal damage that then caused her to die from the result of childbirth. Because it was like metric tons of force would have ripped her vagina in half essentially doing that jump in real life, apparently.
I've heard that one.
So it's like that. But my proper serious theory, to be fair though, is that when Vader's fully then up and he asks straight away to Palpatine, where is Padme? Is she okay? Is she all right? And he's like, it seems that in your anger you killed her. Palpatine wasn't there on Mustafar when he force choked her. He didn't know that she technically survived. So how did Palpatine know that she was dead?
Right.
to me, the only way Palpatine could have done that is if he'd used Sith alchemy to drain the life force out of Padme while she was giving birth and funneled it into Anakin using the force to help him survive his injuries and survive being put into the suit.
Yeah.
So my theory is that Palpatine himself, and that's how he know that she died, because he's the one that drained the life force out of her and fed it into Anakin to help him survive his injuries. Any thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, if you look at it that way, that's like, how do you? I mean, even using the dark side of the Force, Anakin couldn't just keep himself alive, from significant burns, like he's scorched. If he's not in the suit, he has to be in a bacta tank, and that's a good thing, because good way to look at it is because Palpatine wasn't there, so how would he know? And then the fact that he's like, well, maybe with your anger, maybe you killed her, and then he has that smirk. So that right there, Palpatine had to have done something, or at least maybe knowing that the kids wouldn't be born. I don't know if Palpatine knows that Padme did end up birthing Luke and Leia, unless she died, and that happens. But yeah, I think that's a good touch, though, is if they take the rest of Padme, put it into Anakin. But I mean, even Anakin not knowing that Padme technically is always with him. So I mean, that's another good thing to look at too.
It's just always, to me, I've heard many theories over the years of what really killed Padme, but to me that was always the one that made the most sense and kind of fits in with what Palpatine would do of the real final kick in the nail to almost like a piss take out of his apprentice in a way. Was to use the life force of his wife to feed it into him to help him survive and kill her off at the same time, and really cement the fact that he then lost everything that he ever really truly loved. He'd lost Kenobi, he'd lost his wife and his kids. It was just, everything was then gone, and he was fully Palpatine's in every way. So kind of brings, for the prequels anyway, Anakin Skywalker's story to an end. I know we get a bit more in the Kenobi series, in terms of a bit more of how they knew each other so well, how they thought, and then their battle at the end, and especially when that literally in the finale of it, when Kenobi's pretty much beaten Anakin, and they have that conversation, and it's like half Anakin, half Vader, and he's like, don't be sorry, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did.
Chilling.
Sort of, again, especially since his voice regulator was sort of broken, and it was switching between Anakin and Vader's voice, and it was the lighting that they used as well, again, to have Kenobi's sort of saber blue in his face, and then Anakin's go really red when he sort of has that grin on his face and he's going proper Vader on him. It was all done so beautifully, and just continues their little story before, obviously, their encounter again in episode 4. But any final thoughts on Revenge of the Sith?
Unfortunately, we covered so much of it, man. It's just, you never, especially with how much we love this movie, you never want to stop talking about it, because there's no way you can end such a great movie without still elaborating on things. But I think there was something I had read that Kit Fisto, actually, going back to when Palpatine had used the Sith Scream, I've read that Kit Fisto was actually, since he is used to water, and is from a water planet, he is able to, his ears and the way he hears is different. So the shriek was able, or it was kind of muffled to him. It wasn't full force, so he was able to survive just a little bit longer than Kolar and Saesee Tiin. But actually, when Anakin goes into the the Emperor's office, Kit Fisto was actually beheaded, and how we see is that he kind of got slashed across, from shoulder, chest area. It was actually he got beheaded, so it was a little more graphic than what we actually seen. So it's just that's just a little fun fact that I've read before, and it's just crazy, that
Mhm.
those little details, like we've said all day, and they come into play and they paint a bigger picture.
It's even with that same bit as well. It says in the novel that when Anakin showed up to the Emperor's office and he sees Palpatine and Mace Windu going at it, as we said, that they slow down the battles for us on screen. But it's described in the novel that Anakin, even with his abilities with the Force, all he could see was two blurs fighting at such a rapid pace that they were literally a blur even to him. At times he had trouble distinguishing between who was who in the fight until
Crazy.
Windu manages to knock him down and his lightsaber goes out, and Palpatine's lightsaber goes out the window. So it just goes to show that even if they don't show it on screen, the detail that we still get for these films and that we can read about, because I don't know about you, I'm never a fan of people that say, "Oh, if it's not, if they don't tell me about it in a film, then I'm not going to go and read it in a comic or a novel. I shouldn't have to. If it's important enough, they'll show me on screen." I'm like, it's not about whether it's important enough to show you it on screen. It's about whether you want to know that extra detail that gives you extra level of understanding to it all. Right. It's the same thing with The Force Awakens, the final battle at the end between Kylo and Rey. There's bits that are missed aren't in the film that are in the novel, and add a bit more layer to what happens between them. So it's just like, just don't have to show it all in the film, but if you want to be more immersed, if you want to learn more about these things, go and read the comics, go and read the novels.
Right.
Like, listen to the audiobooks if you don't want to read, for fuck's sake. It's nowadays, there is no excuse for not. You only don't learn more if you don't want to, essentially, isn't it? So the amount of information that is out there, we make podcasts about it. You make YouTube videos about it. There's like the mediums are out there to give everyone every bit of information they ever need. It's just those people don't want to learn more because they're just like, if it's not put in front of me on a plate to just lap up straight away, then I don't care. And I'm just like, but imagine how much more you could know. That's just the nerd in me coming out. I'm just like, imagine how much more emotion you could feel when watching this if you knew this information. Like every time we ever watch through any of the Star Wars films, my wife is always like amazed because I will tell her new facts that, like, I haven't sat there and told her every single fact the first time we've watched it. I will bring up new facts every single time we watch it to bring a bit more understanding to certain scenes or something, or go, oh, by the way, this person was actually in this and interacted with this person, but obviously you'd only know this if you read this obscure comic, and sort of like, so I'm like educating her as I go through it. And, to me, that's just the joy of being a Star Wars fan, though. And especially this film. There's so much additional information out there about this film that could really elevate your understanding and joy of the film. Because whilst it's a sad fucking film overall, because of the amount of shit that goes on in it, it's still a film that, as a Star Wars fan, you should be joyous about. It's one of those rare films in general, in just cinema hood altogether, where the bad people win, the bad guys win at the end of it, which is a rarity in itself. So overall, we've both got this top of our lists. I give this an overall, okay, again, one or two slight bits of writing could have been done slightly better. Overall, I still give this a 9.2 out of 10. It really does set up there for me. I mean, you've named it as your top film of all time and everything, haven't you? Yeah. So I can't see that you give this anything less than a 10 out of 10 if that's the case. Yeah,
it's a 10 out of 10.
I'm a bit more harsh with my movie rankings, but I give it a good 9.2, 9.3 out of 10. I put it in my personal top 3 of all time, I think, and that's just down to how much I love it altogether anyway.
Yeah. And see, like, that's the thing. It's like, someone can tell me their favorite movie is Napoleon Dynamite. And it's like, okay, like, that's your favorite movie. It resonates with you differently than how I see it. I mean, I love that damn movie. It's awesome. But, it's, there's people who are like, well, the direction value is not good and the choreography is not good, so it's just not a good movie. It's like, well, I mean, good thing we have opinions, right? Because, to me, Revenge of the Sith is the best movie I've ever seen. I don't get tired of it. I can watch it over and over. It's very rewatchable. And I always like that thing, my dad told me, it's the missing puzzle piece to Star Wars, so without that one, everything was still kind of, uncompleted. So, man, it's the best film in my opinion, man. It's awesome.
And I think there could be no better place to leave it than that, to be fair, man. So that brings an end to our journey through the prequel films of Star Wars. Mate, it has been an epic journey. I am so happy that you agreed to do this with me. I never doubted that you would, to be fair, but at the same point, I don't think there's anyone that I know and could have done this with that would have been a better person to go through it with. So thank you so much for doing this journey through the prequels with me. Tell everyone exactly where we can find your YouTube channel and your podcast.
Yes. Well, thanks to you, man, getting the opportunity to do this on your channel. I always love getting the chance to get on the channel with you and always have good conversations. And if you're rocking with Andy, you always learn something new. This is the guy to get with. But with that being said, thanks again. But yeah, I'm Clan Brandalorian. I run my channel. I do have a podcast as well. Talk everything Star Wars. Got a insane collection of Funko and Lego. You spend a lot of money on it, so you might as well make some content on it as well. So that's basically what we talk about on my channel. So yeah, go check me out. Everything social media and YouTube, Spotify, all Clan Brandalorian. Easy to find.
Absolutely. Get out there, make sure you're following his content. It's definitely worth it. Give his podcast a listen. You will not regret it, I promise you that. You can obviously, if you're not following me yet, please do. You can find me on Instagram, on TikTok. I post on Facebook, but just reminders about where you can find the episodes. I don't post fuck all on Facebook, like who does anymore, to be fair. You still can follow me on Twitch, even though I don't game on there as much as I used to. And I am also on YouTube. Please go and give us a subscribe. Trying to grow the YouTube channel right now. But I guess next in line for Star Wars is it's probably either going to be Solo or Rebels. Not that bothered about Solo, as we discovered earlier on in this episode. But as I said, I'm doing every piece of Star Wars. Although actually, I've probably got a few series to get through because they're all clubbed together at the same time, aren't they? Because we've got like Solo and Kenobi and stuff like that. So yeah, it's going to be a few things on the horizon actually with those. So make sure you're tuning in for that. But until next time, everyone.
Hello there. May the Force be with you. Goodbye, old friend. May the Force be with you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Galactic Core Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. But until next time, go get your geek on.